He lied, cheated, and betrayed me. My ultimate revenge story, true confessional drama. I saw the message pop up on my phone while I was in the middle of scrolling through emails at work. At first, I ignored it, just another notification, right? But the words made my chest tighten. Tell him I know where you really are tonight. My heart stopped. Who the hell is texting me about my man? I stared at my phone, trembling. It was from a number I didn't recognize. I couldn't think straight, so I called him. His voice was warm, casual, like nothing had happened. Hey baby, just landed. Can't wait to see you later. That later sounded off, like it belonged to someone else. The doubt hit me like a freight train. I replayed every detail from his so-called business trip. The hotel he said he checked into didn't match the receipts he sent me. The itinerary was vague, the meetings conveniently canceled or ran late. And suddenly, every little thing felt like a lie I'd been swallowing for months. I went home that night feeling sick, pacing the apartment like a caged animal. My mind raced, imagining him somewhere else, with someone else. I needed proof. I started scrolling through his messages on his shared tablet, pretending I just wanted to check the weather. That's when I found a flirty screenshot of a conversation with some woman named Claire. My hands shook as I opened it. He had sent her pictures I thought were only for me. Pictures of him smiling, leaning against a bar counter, champagne in hand. Not a single mention of business. My stomach dropped, and suddenly every lie, every excuse, every late-night text I brushed off made sense. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, replaying all the times he said he loved me, all the promises about forever. And then anger took over, the kind that burns your chest and twists your stomach. How dare he think I wouldn't find out? How dare he underestimate me? By morning, I had a plan. I wasn't going to confront him with tears. I was going to dismantle him piece by piece. Every secret he thought he had, I was going to expose. But first, I had to feed him the illusion that nothing was wrong. I texted him that morning. Good morning, babe. Can't wait to hear about your trip tonight. Miss you. He replied immediately, full of emojis and heart faces. That fake innocence made my blood boil. I started tracking him, finding patterns, noting who he was texting and when. Every lie had a thread, and I was pulling. The deeper I dug, the more I found. Bars he claimed he hadn't been to, dinners he forgot to mention, hotel rooms that weren't business suites, they were love nests for her. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. A day he swore he'd be home late for meetings. I watched him leave the apartment, smiling that careless smile, thinking I had no idea. I followed him, keeping my distance, heart hammering with anticipation and fury. He pulled up to a building downtown, the kind with valet parking and discreet entrances. And there she was, Claire, laughing, leaning into him, hands where they didn't belong. My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to scream, to rip her apart, but I didn't. I stayed quiet, hiding behind a pillar, recording every second. By the time he left, I had enough evidence to burn their little world down. Pictures, videos, screenshots, they weren't just proof. They were ammunition. And I wasn't done. Not yet. I went back home, my mind racing with plans. I wasn't just going to confront him. I was going to make him feel the betrayal, the humiliation, the heartbreak he tried to hide from me. This wasn't petty revenge, it was poetic justice, and I was the author. I waited until he was asleep that night, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the AC. My phone buzzed with another flirty message from Claire. He didn't even bother hiding it. That's when I knew I wasn't confronting him in words. I was going to let him see exactly what his lies had cost him. I started with subtle changes, small betrayals that would eat at him over time. I rearranged his schedule, called his clients to cancel fake meetings, left little traces of his deception where he would stumble across them. Every time he reached for his phone, he found a reminder that I knew. I watched him unravel, his confidence cracking like glass. Then came the hardest part, getting him to admit it. I set up a surprise dinner at his favorite restaurant, insisting it was a celebration of his successful trip. He walked in unaware, smiling that smug smile. But when I showed him the tablet screenshots, messages, every detail, his eyes went wide. Panic replaced arrogance in an instant. You've been seeing her? I asked, voice steady, almost calm, but the fury underlined every word. He stuttered, tried to charm, to gaslight, but the evidence didn't lie. I could see the fear creeping into his veins like ice. I wasn't done. Oh no. I wanted him to feel what I had felt: the betrayal, the sleepless nights, the gnawing suspicion. So, I posted the screenshots anonymously to a group he thought was private, friends and colleagues who had always admired him. The shock on his face when his phone buzzed and notifications started blowing up was intoxicating. But revenge wasn't just about exposing him, it was about reclaiming power. I started subtly changing my life in ways he would notice. I got a new car, started going out with friends he had ignored me with, posted pictures of my happiness in the very places he lied about being. He saw me living, thriving, untouchable. And he hated it. Then came the final strike. I invited him to talk at my apartment, the same place where he had lied and cheated. He walked in, full of bravado, and I locked the door behind him. I had recorded every confession he tried to hide, every flirty text he had denied, every lie. He tried to fight, to laugh it off, but I played the recordings. The sound of his own words in his ears, the undeniable proof of betrayal, broke him. Tears, anger, pleading, all of it. I stood there, watching him crumble, feeling a rush I had never felt before. This was justice, pure and raw. And I didn't stop there. I made sure his social circle, his family, even his coworkers knew exactly who he was. A man who lied, who cheated, who underestimated me. Every whisper, every glance, every judgment was a mirror to his own disgrace. I had him exactly where I wanted: powerless, exposed, and terrified. And I realized something even deeper. The sweetest revenge wasn't just seeing him suffer. It was that I had survived it, thrived through it, and emerged untouchable. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I watched him leave my life like the shadow he had been, carrying nothing but his guilt and my silent victory. And in that moment, I felt free. Truly, intoxicatingly free. But the thing about betrayal, it never leaves you quietly. I still remember every detail, every lie, every stolen smile he gave to her. And every time I do, I smile. Because I know I am the storm he never saw coming. The next morning, I woke up with a plan already burning in my mind. He thought he had survived the night, but that was only the beginning. I wanted him to feel the full weight of his actions, not just the humiliation in public, but the private, gut-wrenching fear that I could unravel his life at any moment. I started small, slipping notes into his wallet, anonymous reminders of his lies. Little things he would see throughout the day. You think she doesn't know? Every lie has a price. The way his hands would shake when he found them, it was exquisite. I could practically see the panic creeping into his veins, poisoning his arrogance. Then I turned to his friends, subtly planting seeds of doubt. Did you know he's been? I'd trail off, let them fill in the blanks. I watched as smiles froze, eyes narrowed, whispers began. He tried to deny it, tried to laugh it off, but everyone around him started looking at him differently. That's when the real torment began: the slow, merciless unraveling of the world he thought was safe. One night, he came home drunk, the kind of drunk that makes you speak without filters. I was waiting, calm, sipping wine like nothing was wrong. He stumbled toward me, words slurring, and for the first time I saw the real fear in his eyes. I didn't mean dash, he started, but I cut him off with a cold smile. You meant every word, every lie, every betrayal. And now it's your turn to feel it, I said, voice low but steady. I showed him a video I had secretly recorded of him with Claire. Every touch, every laugh, every kiss. He couldn't look away, couldn't deny it. The shame was written across his face, raw and undeniable. And then I escalated. I called Claire, played her a recording of him denying everything to my face, made sure she understood he was exposed. The panic in her voice was almost as sweet as his. I had them both trapped in the reality they thought they controlled. He tried to bargain, to plead, even to cry. I let him. Every tear, every quiver in his voice only confirmed how deep I had cut into his world. But I wasn't satisfied yet. I wanted the full reckoning. I started leaving him gifts, messages on his car windshield, emails to his work, texts to his family, all revealing fragments of the truth. Every time he thought he could breathe, the next reminder hit. He became paranoid, checking his phone constantly, sweating at every ping. The man who once lied with such confidence was reduced to a trembling shell. And I thrived. I wasn't just surviving his betrayal, I was orchestrating a symphony of chaos that he couldn't escape. Each step I took, every move I made, tightened the noose around him. I was the storm that had been building quietly, and now it was roaring. I wanted him to remember this forever, not just the shame, but the sense of helplessness. Every night, I made sure he knew I was watching, always one step ahead, always ready to strike. His life became a mirror of the fear and doubt he had inflicted on me. The ultimate thrill came when I invited him to talk one last time. He walked in, confident at first, until I turned on the lights and showed him the full collection of everything he had hidden from me. Screenshots, videos, messages, receipts, it was all there. He fell to his knees, begging, stumbling over words, trying to explain, trying to rewrite history. I didn't flinch. I let him beg, let him feel the weight of every betrayal. When he finally looked up, his eyes were hollow, and I realized he finally understood the full scope of what he had done and what I had become. I walked out of that room with him broken behind me, leaving him with nothing but the wreckage of his lies. And as I stepped into the sunlight, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: pure, unshakable freedom. He didn't leave the apartment for 3 days. I didn't chase him, didn't call. I let him stew in the silence, letting the walls close in. Every creak of the floorboard, every hum of the fridge was a reminder. I knew. I was still in control. He couldn't escape me, not even in his own home. By the 4th day, desperation had taken over. He knocked on my door, voice trembling, eyes darting like a trapped animal. "Please, just talk to me," he begged. I opened it slowly, savoring every second. I let him see my calm, my unshakable composure, while inside, the storm was just beginning to boil. I made him sit. I didn't yell, didn't scream. I just let him squirm. "Do you know what it's like to feel betrayed by every promise you ever believed?" I asked softly, letting the words sink in. His face twisted, guilt clawing at him. "You've destroyed more than trust. You tried to destroy me. And now you'll understand the consequences." I pulled out the first of the gifts I had prepared, a digital folder labeled everything. He froze as I opened it on the laptop, scrolling through the messages, videos, and screenshots. He tried to look away, but I tilted the screen so he couldn't. Every laugh with her, every whispered lie, every deceitful promise, it was all there, undeniable, raw, merciless. Tears ran down his face, but I didn't soften. I watched him crumble, taking notes in my mind of every expression, every quiver in his voice. I wanted him to remember this, the exact moment he realized the woman he underestimated was the one who could destroy him in the most elegant, perfect way. Then I sent a few anonymous emails, carefully crafted, to his coworkers and closest friends. Each one contained fragments of his lies, subtle enough to make them question his integrity, but explosive enough to ruin his credibility. I saw the panic in his eyes when his phone buzzed, each notification another nail in the coffin. I wanted him to live in paranoia, to feel the constant gnawing of suspicion from everyone around him. Every text, every whisper, every sideways glance would remind him I was always one step ahead. And he had no idea when the next revelation would strike. But I didn't stop there. I started reshaping my own life, making him watch it unfold. New routines, new friends, new places, vivid reminders of the freedom he had tried to cage me from. I posted pictures of my laughter, my joy, subtle messages that weren't aimed at him, but I knew he was watching. He hated it. He tried to reach out, to beg, to bargain. I ignored him. Every plea, every apology, every attempt to reclaim control only fed the fire of his humiliation. I let him fall deeper into his own guilt while I rose, untouchable, unstoppable. One night, he snuck into the apartment when he thought I was out. I caught him immediately. I didn't scream, didn't run. I just let him see me, calm, collected, and utterly in control. "You're still trying," I said, voice low and cutting. "You never learn, do you?" I handed him a note I had slipped into his pocket earlier. This is your life now. Every lie, every betrayal, every secret. All of it is yours to carry. And I am free. He read it, trembling, realizing he had no escape. And in that moment, I felt it the final, unshakable victory. He was broken, powerless, and exposed. And I was everything he could never touch again. I watched him from the balcony that night, pacing the living room like a caged animal. Every move he made screamed panic, desperation, and regret. I didn't need to touch him. I didn't need to raise my voice. Just being there, watching, letting him know I was always one step ahead, was enough to crush him. I started leaving him reminders small, intentional, like breadcrumbs leading him through his own guilt. A receipt from a hotel he'd lied about, a lipstick stain on a napkin, a note I forgot to hide, I know. Every time he discovered one, his face paled, his chest tightened, and I could feel the fear radiating from him. The crescendo of revenge came when I invited Claire into his world carefully, anonymously, in ways he couldn't anticipate. I leaked subtle hints to mutual friends, letting them notice her presence in places she shouldn't be. Texts tagged photos, casual mentions in conversation. He panicked, trying to spin stories, but the threads were already tangled beyond repair. Then came the final confrontation. I staged it to perfection. He walked into the apartment, thinking he could apologize, thinking he could reclaim control. But I was waiting, every detail prepared. Screens, photos, videos all lined up to play the truth in real time. He froze when he saw it. I thought I could keep you in the dark forever, I said softly, letting the calmness cut deeper than any scream could. But I always knew. I just let you think you were safe, until now. I turned on the first video, a clip of him and Claire, every laugh, every touch, every kiss captured. He tried to avert his eyes, but I moved the screen so he couldn't. I let him watch himself betray me, knowing the shame would dig its claws into his soul. Then I let him hear my voice-recorded confrontations, the voice notes he had never known I saved. His own words echoed back to him, lies, excuses, confessions he had tried to bury. He crumpled to his knees, trembling, the weight of every secret pressing down. I didn't speak again. I let him live in it the full, suffocating reality of his deceit. Every email, every whispered conversation, every mutual friend who had seen the leaks added another layer of torment. He couldn't escape, couldn't hide. And the more he realized it, the deeper the fear dug into him. Finally, I stepped back and let him see me composed, radiant, untouchable. I had destroyed his illusions, shattered his lies, and reclaimed everything he thought he could steal. The man who once laughed in my face, who thought he could manipulate me, was gone. In his place was a broken shadow, staring at the woman he had tried to betray. I walked out of the apartment, leaving him behind with nothing but the wreckage of his choices. And as I stepped into the night, I felt it, the intoxicating, unshakable freedom of knowing I had survived, I had thrived, and I had delivered the ultimate, unforgettable revenge. He didn't leave the apartment for days after that night. I didn't reach out. I let him stew, let the silence press in like a weight he couldn't shake. Every creak of the floor, every hum of the fridge, every shadow in the hall reminded him I knew. I was always watching. By the third day, desperation overcame him. He slid a note under my door, trembling handwriting spelling out, "Please, can we talk? I'll do anything." I picked it up slowly, savoring every syllable. I let the power linger in my hands. I didn't reply. Not yet. I wanted him to feel the gnawing anxiety of uncertainty, the fear of what I might do next. When I finally did see him, I didn't scream. I didn't rage. I simply let him sit across from me while I poured coffee, calm as a hurricane. The storm was in him, not me. "Do you know what it's like to lose everything you thought you owned?" I asked softly, letting each word land like a hammer. He shook his head, voice cracking, eyes darting to the floor. I didn't mean," he stammered. But I cut him off. "You meant every lie, every stolen kiss, every deceitful smile. And now you'll understand exactly what that feels like." I pulled out my phone and played the first recording I had secretly captured of him with Claire. His laughter, his whispered words, the way he touched her, it all hit him like a punch to the gut. He tried to look away, but I made sure he couldn't. I let the same sink in, layer by layer. Then I escalated. I sent anonymous messages to his coworkers, snippets of the truth that would make them question everything about him. I left subtle hints with friends, family, and neighbors, ensuring that everywhere he turned, he would face a mirror of his own lies. I watched him spiral. Every attempt to explain, every desperate plea, every tear only deepened his torment. I let him feel powerless, like the world was closing in, and there was nothing he could do to escape it. I had become the architect of his fear, and he had no idea what was coming next. The final act came when I invited him into my apartment one last time. He walked in, confident at first, until I turned on the laptop. Screens, videos, messages, receipts, all of it ready to play. His face went pale. He realized he had walked into the eye of the storm he had created. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't touch him. I simply let him watch, let him hear the truth in its purest form. Every lie exposed, every betrayal laid bare. He crumpled to his knees, the weight of his actions finally sinking in. I stepped back, letting him see me untouchable, radiant, free. The man who had once lied to my face, cheated in secret, and thought he could control me, was gone. In his place was a broken shadow, consumed by shame, fear, and regret. And as I walked out into the night, I felt it, the intoxicating, unshakable freedom of survival, triumph, and perfect, relentless revenge. He didn't speak to me for weeks after that night. Not a word, not a single apology, not even a look. I let him stew in silence, letting the walls of our apartment and, more importantly, the walls of his own mind close in. Every creak, every distant sound, every notification on his phone reminded him, I knew. I had never been closer to him than when I wasn't there at all. By the second week, I started seeing the cracks everywhere. He'd check his phone constantly, panicking at every ping. I could hear the tremor in his hands when he picked it up. He couldn't rest, couldn't think straight, because every little message, every whispered rumor I'd seeded among friends and colleagues, gnawed at him like acid. I began leaving subtle reminders around the apartment. A lipstick-stained napkin here, a receipt there, little things that weren't mine but screamed my presence. He found them, his face draining of color every time. And I watched from a distance as his bravado, that arrogant mask he wore so comfortably for so long, completely disintegrated. Then came the psychological play, slow, deliberate, and cruelly precise. I started posting hints of my new life. Dinners with friends, solo trips, nights out laughing without him. Not aimed at him, not exactly, but I knew he'd see them. The man who tried to control me, to cage me in lies, was now forced to watch the life he had tried to steal from me flourish without him. He tried to reach out. Messages, calls, desperate voicemails begging for a second chance. I ignored them. Every plea only fueled the fire of his own self-loathing. I didn't respond because I didn't have to. The chaos I had sown was already consuming him. Finally, I orchestrated the ultimate reckoning. I invited him over under the guise of a final talk. When he walked in, expecting forgiveness, I turned on the laptop. Screens, messages, videos, everything he had tried to hide played in full. He froze, realization washing over him like ice water. You always thought you could lie your way out, I said softly. But I gave you no escape. Every move, every betrayal, every stolen moment, it's all here. And you will live with it. He tried to explain, to plead, to shift the blame. I didn't let him. I let him watch himself, hear himself, see himself as the coward he had become. Tears, panic, shame, they consumed him from the inside out. I let it burn, savoring every second, knowing he finally understood the depth of his own destruction. Then I stood, calm and collected, while he crumpled to the floor. I didn't scream, I didn't hit, I didn't humiliate him publicly. I let the exposure and the fear do the work. He realized, completely and irrevocably, that he had lost more than just me. He had lost his dignity, his control, and the world he thought was safe. As I walked out that night, leaving him behind, I felt the purest freedom I had ever known. The storm I had become had swept through his life completely, leaving only ruin in its wake. And in that ruin, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time: power, clarity, and unshakable peace. By the time the week ended, he was a shadow of the man he used to be. I didn't have to do much. The world I had quietly set in motion was devouring him. Friends whispered, colleagues gave him sideways glances, and everywhere he went, the subtle hints of his betrayal followed him like a specter. I watched him struggle, knowing every glance, every question he avoided, every judgment he feared was because of me. I didn't revel in cruelty for the sake of it, I reveled in justice. He had built his life on lies, and I had simply held up a mirror. Meanwhile, I rebuilt my own life in ways he would notice, ways he couldn't touch. New routines, new friends, trips to places he had lied about going to with someone else. I posted pictures of myself laughing, glowing, thriving. Each post wasn't a taunt, not exactly, it was proof. Proof that I had survived him, that I was untouchable, and that I had reclaimed everything he had tried to steal. I didn't answer his calls, didn't reply to his messages. He sent flowers. I let them sit untouched in the corner, wilting, just like his pride. He tried showing up at my favorite spots, hoping to catch a glimpse of me, hoping to see some sign that he could worm his way back in. But I was always just out of reach, moving freely, laughing freely, thriving freely, and he couldn't do a damn thing about it. Then, the final act of exposure. I reached out anonymously to Claire, making her aware that she was a pawn in a game she hadn't realized she was playing. I didn't need to confront her directly. I just let her know he was exposed, that I had all the proof, and that his life was unraveling around him. The panic in her voice when she realized what I had done, it was almost as sweet as watching him fall. He tried one last time. A desperate knock at my door, voice shaking, eyes wild. I let him stand there for a long moment before opening it, calm, collected, untouchable. "You still don't get it," I said softly. "This isn't about forgiveness. This is about consequences. And you've run out of chances." I handed him a folder, a simple digital file labeled "Everything You Lost." Screenshots, videos, messages, every proof he could never deny. His face drained of color as he realized the magnitude of what he had done and what he had lost. He was powerless. He was exposed. And I was untouchable. I didn't scream. I didn't hit. I didn't have to. I walked out into the night, leaving him behind with the ruins of his life. He had underestimated me, betrayed me, and thought he could control me, but I had survived. I had thrived, and I had orchestrated the ultimate, perfect revenge. And in that freedom, in that sweet, unshakable victory, I realized something more profound than anger or revenge. I had reclaimed myself. I was whole, untouchable, and finally, utterly free. After that night, he disappeared from my life almost entirely. Not because I chased him away, but because the world I had rebuilt around me left no room for him. He tried messages, calls, even showing up at places he thought I might be, but I was always just out of reach, thriving, untouchable, untethered. The whispers followed him everywhere. Friends he thought were loyal began questioning his integrity. Colleagues doubted his professionalism. Even casual acquaintances glanced at him differently. Every subtle look, every judgmental whisper was a reminder of what he had done and the woman he had underestimated. I didn't have to orchestrate it directly. I had set the dominoes in motion, and they fell on their own. Meanwhile, I reclaimed pieces of my life that he had tried to cage. I traveled, I laughed, I lived fully, unapologetically. I found myself again, the woman I had been before his lies, but stronger, sharper, unbreakable. Each day, every experience, every adventure reminded me that freedom tastes better than vengeance, even though vengeance had been sweet. I even began cultivating new relationships, not romantic, not yet, but friendships and connections with people who respected me, who understood my strength. I had learned that betrayal can either break you or teach you to rebuild yourself entirely. And I chose the latter. Sometimes, I'd catch him in passing on the street, at a coffee shop, maybe even at a work event. His eyes would flick to mine, a flash of panic, recognition, regret. And I would smile, calm, radiant, free. He had lived through the consequences of his choices, and I didn't need to speak a word for him to understand that he had lost everything that mattered. Months later, I stumbled upon an article in a local paper. It mentioned him in passing, a warning about his dishonesty in business, an expose that highlighted mismanaged deals, questionable behavior. I didn't feel satisfaction in a petty way. I felt complete. His world, built on lies, had crumbled under its own weight, and I had been the quiet catalyst. And me? I was untouchable. I was thriving, laughing, living without fear. The betrayal that had once consumed me no longer had power over my heart. I had turned pain into empowerment, heartbreak into liberation. The storm had passed, and I was stronger, unbroken, free. I finally understood the truth of betrayal. It doesn't define you, it reveals who you truly are. And in surviving him, I had discovered the most powerful version of myself. Unshakable, indestructible, free. By the time I truly moved on, he had become a ghost in my world. Not because I sought to erase him, but because the consequences of his choices had done it for me. He lingered on the edges of my life like a shadow, always aware, always cautious, and always haunted by what he had lost. I started living deliberately in ways he could never influence. Weekends I had once spent waiting for his calls, I spent exploring parts of the city he had never cared to show me. I laughed in cafes, danced in dimly lit bars, traveled solo for the first time in years, and each time I did, I felt the weight of betrayal lift further from my shoulders. I was reclaiming my joy, piece by piece, moment by moment. And yet, I didn't forget. Every now and then, I would remember his face when he first saw the recordings, the way his arrogance shattered into pure, raw panic. That memory became a quiet strength, a reminder that I had survived the storm he thought he controlled. It wasn't revenge for revenge's sake, it was proof of my own power. Friends noticed the change in me. They said I glowed, that I seemed untouchable, unshakable. They didn't know the quiet, meticulous ways I had turned heartbreak into liberation, how every calculated step had not only exposed him, but strengthened me. And I let them think it was just confidence. They didn't need to know the full story. Months passed, and I realized something remarkable. I no longer needed to check, to track, to remind myself. The storm had settled. His whispers and messages had stopped. Even when he appeared in public spaces, I ignored him, smiled warmly at strangers, and kept moving forward. He had nothing left to give me. I had everything. The ultimate closure came quietly. One evening, while walking through a park I had once loved with him, I saw him in the distance, alone, staring down at his phone like he was trying to find a lifeline. He didn't see me at first. I paused, savoring the moment not out of cruelty, but because it was the final confirmation. I was free, thriving, and untouchable. He was still chained to the wreckage he had created, and I was walking forward into the sunlight. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The betrayal that once consumed me had been transformed into strength. Every sleepless night, every gnawing suspicion, every tear had been a lesson in resilience and power. And in surviving him, I had discovered the most important truth. Nothing, not lies, not betrayal, not heartbreak could ever touch the woman I had become. I walked on, unbroken, radiant, free. And for the first time in years, I felt it fully. The intoxicating, unshakable bliss of a life reclaimed, a heart hardened by pain but softened by wisdom, and a soul untethered, unbound, and victorious.